Is this working? Is my eye really big? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ryan Ride Mechanic channel. How the heck are you? All right, today's show, Fury 325. It's back in the news for a little bit, and I wanted to do some investigating and figure out what's going on. So let's get right into it.
Now get ready. Here we go.
All right, for those of you coming back, welcome. For those of you first time here, welcome. Glad you're here. Glad you made it. Glad you clicked on the video. All right, so Fury 325, it's back in the news. What happened? Well, back in July 7th, it unexpectedly just stopped operating. The ride didn't open up and nobody knew why. Later on, they came out and said there was a foundation issue. Right? Kind of sounds familiar. I think in my last video, the first video I ever made about Fury 325, kind of thought there might be some foundation issues. Although after the whole beam splitting apart in half and all that stuff happened, they seemed to discredit that and they're like, no, there's no foundation issues, nothing like that here. So, okay, moving along. So, while trying to dig in a little bit deeper, it's like, well, maybe I can contact them and get some more information. You know how that went. It went over like a fart in church. Kind of looked like this. Let's ask some questions. Hey, Ryan the Ride Mechanic here. Wanted to know if I could ask you guys some questions about the Fury 325 repair that's going on. On July 7th, during routine maintenance inspections, we identified an issue with a ride foundation. On the same date, we immediately removed the ride from service and proactively notified state regulators and began the repair process. While the issue did not impact guest safety, we initiated a series of corrective measures out of an abundance of caution. These actions reflect our rigorous maintenance programs and our commitment to addressing issues proactively before they can impact operations or guest safety. We look forward to opening the ride as soon as the work is completed. The safety of our guests and team members is a top priority. Okay, thanks for the statement. Okay, so there was basically no extra information on top of what was already there. What's already been released, they're not going to release more information to any other specific channels out there. So, okay, so someone sent me a link and they sent me to the Carowinds Fans Only page, basically that only post that is basically all about the rides, all about the park there. And it had me intrigued because they were taking a lot of pictures of Fury 325. There was a lot of information there, basically picture-wise. And I was like, oh, I could finally see it. For those of you who know, like midway through, there was just a wall that popped up around this footer. And they didn't really give us a lot of information as to like what was happening or anything. They said foundation issue later on, and this wall was here. So someone sent me a picture of that wall and they said, hey, what do you think's going on here? And I speculated, complete speculation at the time. I'm like, well, it looks like they're doing something around that footer, something that they don't want everyone taking pictures of. Understandably so, especially this day and age, people like me out there. Anyways, so I went on to this Carowinds Fans Only posts and I looked for some pictures, and they've got a lot of really nice stuff there, a lot of nice pictures. All these pictures are from them. So let me see here. Here's one of the first pictures I've got right here. Basically, as you can see, this is the track. Basically, I believe that pillar that cracked before, the one that catastrophically split in half, is this guy right here. I believe that's the one. But the footer, the pillar that we're dealing with now is this one right here. Of course, there's nothing wrong up on top. Actually, what we're looking at is down here at the bottom. We're looking at that guy. You can see the grounds. They had a wall up all around it, and the grass is all torn up there. So we are looking at this particular area. Here's a good picture far away of what was done. Basically, as you could see, these footers are really square and blocky right around here. Everything looks like a nice little perfect square sitting there. But this one now is a nice rectangle shape around there. So it's like, that had me interested. I'm like, did they replace the footer? Did they add on to the footer? What did they do? So I started looking at some of the other pictures. Now here's a really good picture that kind of sums it up right here of what's happening. Because you could see in the background, this is a brand new support pillar, basically. This is the one that B&M had to remanufacture for the ride about 3 years ago when that other pillar tore in half. And you could see it's got new hardware down here at the bottom that was put on. And the size of the pillar is still really short. But if you look at this one in the foreground right here, this is the one that was just worked on. So this is, you can see all the dirt surrounding the area right here. They haven't put grass in for this picture. I know there's grass in there right now. So this was, in this particular area, is like, that's interesting. I was very curious to see, like, well, those nuts on there, if I could zoom in a little bit. Too pixelated. There we go. These nuts right here
It's the one and only.
don't look like they've been taken apart at all. You can see they're still nice and painted white for the most part. And the threads on top don't look like they've been disturbed that much. So I'm like, okay, maybe they just put the old nuts back on. Now here is a more up-to-date picture. You can see that there's grass in here now. This more update picture now has, it's like, oh, we can get right up next to this pillar and see it now. Okay, that's really cool. What's going on here? So I'm looking at the fasteners again, zoom into it a little bit, move over just a hair. I'm like, okay, this fastener in particular, these two nuts right here, does not look like they've been broken apart at all. This hasn't moved. On top of that, underneath here, this footer doesn't look like anything's happened with it. It looks like the original footer. But then there's these two brand new pads on the outsides of it. So I'm like, okay, this is your original grout pack. Remember, the footer is this actual piece down here. This is the, I would say, the square base. That's the actual footer. That's the pier. That's the piece that goes down in the ground. This tapered part up here underneath the column, that's just grout. All that is just to take up the room between the concrete and the top. Because what there is underneath there is you have your footer that sits here like that, and it's got these big metal studs that come up out of the center of the thing. That's these that the nuts go on top of. Well, the way they do this is they put that support leg down on top of there, and it has to float in this exact little spot. Well, underneath there, they run nuts up against the bottom of it to hold its position level right there. And then they run nuts on top down and they tighten it together. So what you're left with, the footer is completely doing its job. The fasteners are doing its job, but in between there's a grout pack sitting there that is taking up all the space and it's sealing everything out. Now the grout pack actually has a job, and it is to, because those studs stick up, and they, at a small level, they can actually like wiggle back and forth. So the grout pack's job is to take up the space between the footer and the bottom of that support pillar so it doesn't move anywhere. So everything kind of works together. The grout pack, the footer, the hardware, everything works together to anchor that particular leg. So I started asking myself, I'm like, well, what would cause these two outside things to appear? What would cause it where they were going through an inspection and they said, we have a problem here. And all I could think of is that the pillar itself, the footer that goes down inside the ground, exhibited signs of movement. So it's like, how do you see if a footer's moving? Because it's not one of these things you'd walk up and you could just see, oh, look, it's moving all around. They don't work that way. What footers typically do is you look for them with water around the base of them. When you have water around the base, it's really easy to see. If the footer moves at all, it will literally bring the water in to wherever the gap is. And then as the train goes by, it will forcefully eject water out of there. There's actually a term for it. It's called pumping. The footer will do pumping. It can do it either left to right or side to side, where it will suck water into one side and then squeeze it out the other side. Or it could do it as if the entire thing is lifting up out of the ground as the train goes by and then pushing back down, and all the water just shoots up from the sides because it's literally flooding in the bottom and then going up the sides of the thing. Once you start pumping with water, especially once you start pumping a footer, the ground erodes super fast all the way around it, making the entire thing loose. So I do feel like what happened here is that this particular leg, this pier footer, has loosened in the ground. And now it's no longer being held steady, it's moving around. And I think somebody noticed somehow that it was moving around, side to side, front to back, whatever it was. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. So I think what the park did in this case is they came out and they said, all right, let's go ahead and dig down on both sides of it. Now, the fact that these things isn't like this massive, giant, square pillar sitting there kind of tells me that they think it was only moving in one direction. It wasn't moving this way, it was only moving this way, which makes sense because the track above it, it's basically pulling the thing one side to the other. All right, we'll use Google Maps because I like that. That's cool. All right, so, where it's not so granular. All right, so this is the area that we're talking about right in here. It's this outer support right here. And I believe this is the one that we're looking at right here. This guy right there, that's the footer. This is the one, I believe, here that actually had the footer replaced. That had the whole thing replaced. I think I'm in the right area. Pretty sure I am because it was close to these other two right here. It's in this little spot. So what's happened is that as the train goes by, you got to remember all the force from this curve wants to take this whole assembly and push it this way towards the parking lot, pretty much in a straight line out. So it would make sense if that pier, if that footer decided to loosen, that it wasn't loosening up side to side because the track's not really trying to do side to side. The track is trying to pull the thing from one side to another. So I imagined when they found this and they shut the ride down, they probably saw, if nothing else, they saw a gap on one side of that footer. And then maybe a mechanic, maybe somebody else was like, hey, run the train by. This looks like a gap. Run the train by. And they probably ran a train or two or three or four around the thing. And they literally sat there and watched the thing to see if they could see it moving. Now, a lot of times you might not be able to see it move at all. So you do things like take a big base and a dial indicator, which is just very precise measurement, and hook the dial indicator up to the side of it to see if it were to move. Now, I know the question in the comments is going to be, how much do you think it's going to be? I don't know. Don't know how much it's going to be. But I know if you hook a dial indicator up, and the needle would probably just go wheeling right back down because it's like, whoa, that's moving a lot. One of the other questions, or one of the other theories I had, was that the pier had broken. Now, that happens with footers sometimes. Sometimes they will actually break in half completely, about 10 to 15 feet down into the ground. The footer just completely will break. But typically what you see there is that there will be concrete all the way around the outside of the thing, and the original fasteners and hardware and grout pack, everything, all that stuff will be gone. Because what they have to do is they have to dig down around the affected pillar into the ground, find where it's broken, completely remove the rest of it, jackhammer the concrete away. That's from the ground up, I should say. Jackhammer the concrete away, jackhammer the grout pack out of there, take the hardware off, everything. Then they have to basically make 3 or 4, one big massive footer back in its spot. And then before concrete is laid, they have to put a steel substructure inside of it. I'm talking like I-beams welded together with frames that go down into the ground as well. And then at the very top, it'll have a new set of anchoring bolts or anchoring studs sticking up to where nuts and things like that can go on that. So I don't think this was a case where the footer or pier broke. I think this is simply a case where the footer loosened. Now, from the first crack that Fury 325 did 3 years ago when it just completely sheared in half on itself, they've done ground studies and they said the ground was fine. And they're like, I know a lot of people, well, does that mean those studies were wrong? It's like, no, it doesn't mean those studies were wrong. It just means that the coaster is, layman's terms, really impressive. And sometimes these things happen. Again, manufacturers make these things for the longevity of the coaster's life, 20, 30 years of service. They make these things to withstand that much time, but they can't quite determine what the ground is going to do. The ground might loosen up, the ground might settle, all sorts of things might happen. They might have to make reinforcement things. These are just things that, these things happen. There's no real way around it. Like, coasters are a completely dynamic creature. It's not, you can't just say it's a stamp, boom, there you go. Because ground, water tables, everything makes a difference. I remember at Great America in California, it used to be called Top Gun, I believe it's Flight Deck now, basically went out over the water and made a big U-turn, or big 360-degree helix out over the water. And it was really cool. Still is really cool. So what happened there is that they started developing cracking and started breaking bolts and stuff around that thing. And they're like, what's going on? They came out and resurveyed that entire helix that was over the water and anchored into piers over the water. The entire thing was sinking. Did they think about that when they built the ride? Yes, they did. Did they engineer that? Yes, they did. Did they do the groundwork? Yes, they did. Did they make sure everything was correct? Yes, they did. What happened then? It's like stuff changes. Again, over all that time, stuff changes. And it's just like, well, it's not that they got it wrong. It's just that there's other factors involved with this stuff that you can't necessarily predict all the time. Again, it's a dynamic environment that you can't predict all the time. This is the reason why we go out and do daily inspections on things, because stuff happens. You can make all the engineering and do everything correctly. It's like, okay, great, we did everything perfect right on the dot. Ride broke down. Why? Tree branch fell on it. Yeah, your engineering didn't do the tree branch, did it? Like, no, tree branch fell on top of it. There's not much you can do. We had a wooden roller coaster where a lady backed her, like, someone was teaching this lady to drive, and she literally drove through the park perimeter fencing into the wooden roller coaster and messed up a ton of stuff. The engineering didn't account for that. It's like, we put up signs, we put up fences, we put all sorts of stuff up. It's like, no, engineering didn't account for that. So again, you have to give manufacturers credit and say they do the absolute best they can. The numbers are right. The safety is correct. Everything is spot on. But when they come across things, sometimes stuff happens and you just have to deal with it, which is what the park did. They dealt with it. Good job for the park. Looks nice. It's nice and clean too. It's not a big nasty mess, and I definitely applaud the park for putting grass back around it quickly. That's a good deal. Here's another look at that footer from straight on. Again, you can really see in this one. Let's see if we can zoom in on it. Yeah, you can really see here that these guys were not loosened. They were not taken off, so nothing was moved. The height of the pillar, the height of the footer was not adjusted to accommodate for anything. So I don't think they were worried about it sinking. They weren't worried about the thing sinking down at all. There's nothing reinforced, again, to the left and to the right side, so they weren't worried about left and right movement. It was only stuff front and behind. So basically the pillar was just moving forward and backwards as the train went by. Speculation here, again, it's complete speculation, nothing else other than that. Speculation is that they probably dug way down into the ground on both the front and the back side and to some extent, engineers probably gave them a number to go. They said, hey, dig 20 feet down, dig 30 feet down, do something to unearth the pier, maybe even to make sure the pier was still intact down there, because again, there's no real great way to test for that. Maybe they said dig 25 feet down, make sure the pier is still intact and it's not completely shattered down there. And as long as it's still intact, just those holes that you use to dig down and check it, fill them all the way back with concrete, maybe put a cage inside of it. Not sure what else might have happened. There might be strapping holding both sides together under the ground. We never got to see any of that stuff. And then they said, put the concrete back on it, let it cure. Golden. Run some test cycles on it, let it go again. Are they going to be watching this like a hawk? Absolutely. Is this going to happen to all the other ones? Probably not. No, it's probably just going to be this one. But are they going to keep a really tight eye out there for those other footers and pillars moving? It's like, yes, they are. Yes, they are. Now, there might be one of those things they might notice one of these things just starting to do that. And they might keep a critical eye on it and keep the ride in operation, making sure they can get it through to the off season where they can maybe do more pillars. But for right now, this one was the critical one. This one was the shutdown. I understand, it's a modification to the ride. It's groundwork modification. So the governing bodies had to come back in and say, okay, yep, the ride was still safe according to the city, state there, whoever the regulators are that do this sort of stuff. So I wasn't planning on making this a full video. I was just going to do like, this is going to just be a touch-up video, a couple 5 minutes. But the more I started looking at it, I started like, they didn't do this. They didn't replace that. They didn't take the original. Like, why would they do that? Because it's getting this movement. I was more and more intrigued by it. So I started getting more information together, and I was just like, okay, let's make this one of my weekly videos. Could do that. Maybe I'll put out another trip video this week. Not sure yet. All right, I think that's going to do it for this video. Do you have anything to add for this? If you're there all the time and you know something that's been happening that might shed some more light on this situation, let me know. Always put it down in the comments down there. I'm sure everyone else wants to know as well. I believe the ride has started testing as of right now. If it's not completely open, I think it started testing. So it's going to be hopefully back up in operation soon, if not already. All right, like, subscribe, share, do all that other stuff downstairs. It does help me out. I do appreciate it. And as always, stay off the air gates. Bye.